Hey everyone, welcome back to another Bronco video. If you've been following along, you know we have the worn front bumper and winch installed already. And what came for today's video is this. That is the matching rear bumper from Warren as well. As you can see, it comes wrapped crazily in this blanket here, so we'll get that all undone. And hardware wise, comes in this box. You get little rubber grommets, these plastic clamps or plugs, a couple little nuts and bolts and washers, these plastic clamps as well. You can thread a nut and bolt into there. You get epoxy. I'm not exactly sure what this is for yet. I think it might be to seal the sensors once you put it back into the new bumper. And you get a new LED light for your license plate. So I'll get this unwrapped, show you what it looks like, and then we'll start the install. Alright, so before we get it on the car, this is it. You can see Warren Elite to match the front. You have 4 holes, 2 on each side of the cutout for the wheel, 1 on the other side, that will be for your sensors. And then you also have your holes and a cutout here, that is for the LED light. And you have the 4 little squares there, that is for these white clips to attach your license plate cover later. So first things first, we'll get the old one off of the car because we need to transfer the sensors over to the new one. Alright, now you can see we are under the car. It's the same on both sides. What you got to do is you'll have your 2 bolts here, 18 mil, 113 here, and then these 3 are 15, I believe. Remove all of them. Same on the other side. These 2 bolts are actually where the tow hook is on that side. And then if you come up here, before you do anything as well, you have a wiring harness on each side. Up just behind the tire. You got to undo that on each side because that is for your sensors as well. Alright, so the bumper is off. It's super light. This one probably only weighs about 10 pounds. This thing on the other hand is steel. It weighs about probably 40, maybe 50 pounds. So what we got to do now is get these sensors out. So if you flip this over, this is the plastic bumper, so it's a little bit different. This is all exposed already. If you have the steel bumper on your Bronco and you're upgrading, this will have another plate around it with a bunch of nuts and bolts you got to take off to get to the wiring harness. So that part is 1 step less on this. Also, I mentioned when undoing this you had to take out those 15 mil bolts. You don't. This is actually just a bracket attached to there. So all you have is your 2 18 millimeters on the bottom here and 1 13 mil that went in here, and then the bracket just comes off with the bumper itself. So what we're going to do now is get all these clips off to get the wiring harness out. And also you have to keep in mind you have to do your license plate light as well. And that is this little wiring harness right here. Alright, so wiring harness is out. To get these off, you see the little kind of jagged spot on the end there. You just push on it and that lifts up this side and it undoes it from that little notch there on your clips. The license plate one is a bit of a pain in the butt. Just push really hard towards the outside and it'll pop off. Then you're good. You can mark these if you want. If you don't, all you got to remember is the one with the 2 close side by side. The one is for your license plate. So this side will have 2 really close. License plate side is obviously the driver's side. Whereas this end, you can see it only has the 1. And then it's just held on by a bunch of these little push clips. So you got to get in there, undo it all the way along, get it all unplugged, and then we can work on getting these sensors themselves out of the way. Alright, now that the wiring harness is out of the way, we need to get these sensors themselves out. You can see I put a piece of tape and numbered them. This is backwards for you guys, just the way I'm sitting. This is actually the bottom of the bumper, and this is the driver's side. So we labeled it 1, 2, 3, and 4. That's just so you get them back in the right order when you put them in. Also, what you have to keep in mind is you can see the part where the harness plugs in is pointing outwards on here as well as on this driver's side one. I already have these 2 popped out, but they were facing the other way. So from the center, the wiring harness plugs go outwards. So as long as you have that right, and then you get your numbers in the right orientation, make sure your numbers not upside down, otherwise they're on backwards. you will have it in the correct spot once you get back in there. But to get these off, you just basically push outwards on the clip on each side, and then you push inwards from this piece, if you can see it. Push in on the little hole, the little piece, that's your actual sensor, and they pop right out. And now once you have these sensors themselves out, you just have to get the little housing out, and that is super easy. You just push the other way now on these black clips, just squeeze it, and you can see it pops right out. Take the white piece out, come back around the other side, and that is just your housing for the actual sensor itself. And now the 4 little white clips you get go in these 4 square holes. Just line it up, give it a smack, and it clicks in just like that. That will be for your license plate screws afterwards. So just get those all in, they're out of the way, and then you can move on to the next step. Alright, so once you get the harness out and these brackets or the little plastic clips off of the old bumper, you have to put it onto the new bumper. For some reason, Warren makes the 2 on the outside big enough. You can just pop them in, clip the white piece back on, and it holds it. But if you look here, you can see it's got kind of a weird cutout. So you have to modify the 2 middle ones. What you have to do is that little piece there and that little piece on the other side, you just have to trim it off. Get a knife, cut them off, and it'll look like that. Doesn't have to be fancy, you don't see this once it's on, but then this can fit in the hole and it will go flush up against the bumper. Whereas if you don't cut those off, it doesn't go in, you have a little gap there. So snip them off, then you can put that in, clip this little white piece back on, and that will hold the retainer in at least. Alright, now before you move on to anything else, you can see we do have our sensors back in. They are fairly loose, so they send you this epoxy. It's fast setting, so I'm not going to film this part, but basically mix this up. You can see you got 2 sides, mix it all together. Before you do this, make sure you obviously got them in the right spot. Same as the other one, we have 1, 2, 3, 4. Mix this up. Comes with your little stick here to mix it, and then you can just basically smear it around the outsides here. It's fast setting, so it'll dry relatively quick, and just get this aligned where you want it. Put the epoxy around, give it a few minutes to dry, and that'll stop it from rattling around once you get it installed. But you want to do this before the harness goes on, just so it's out of the way and you can get a nice even coat around everything. Alright, so it is all on. Basically all you have to do, cut open both sides, squeeze them out. One's pink and one is clear. You'll mix them all together till it turns nice white and creamy. And I used that both is just enough to do both sensors, so 1 pack does 2 sensors, 2 packs, so 2 and 2. And just basically smear it all around here. It doesn't have to look too pretty. This will dry clear and it's behind the bumper anyways. Just should go without saying, but don't get any in your plug here. That's where your wiring harness has to go into, and this stuff will dry hard as a rock. So if you get it in there, you're gonna have big problems. But you can see, get it all in, smeared around. And while we wait for that to dry, we're gonna work on the wiring harness, because you have a little bit of electrical work to do to make this work. So this bumper comes with a new LED light to light up your license plate. It will go in the 2 holes beside those 4 white clips we put in. I'll show you that once we get it on, but you have to wire this into the harness. I was hoping that they did it themselves under this tape, so I ended up cutting the electrical tape off just to see, but you can see this is its own piece. It'll run through here and end up in your harness in the end. So what you have to do is you actually have to cut this connector off and wire this directly to it. So what I did, went to the store, ordered these little heat shrink and clamp connectors for the wire. Only thing, I'm sure it'll work either way, but these are just 2 black wires, whereas you can see in your license plate one you have 1 black, 1 yellow. So if you do this, I'm going to test it out, cut them off, put them together. If the light doesn't turn on, you most likely just have the wires the wrong way around. So 50-50 chance it works, so we'll find out. Okay, so now before you hook this up to the actual wire, you can see I just cut the top off, trimmed the casing off, so you got the wire exposed. That'll go into the other end of this eventually, but this doesn't fit through the hole that it goes onto the bumper in, so you got to feed the wires through first. Basically what you get is you'll want it to sit that way, so the light faces where your license plate will be. You get a bolt, put the bolt in the hole here, then you get a big washer, a lock washer, which is a little bit smaller, and a little nut. Those all go on the other side, so this side will be just the bolt. Feed it through there, just like that. Put it in, get your nuts and bolts in there, tighten her down, and then we can hook it up to our harness, get all that plugged back in, and then the bumper is pretty much ready to go onto the car. Okay, so the wiring harness is in. The middle two are pretty tight, so you don't get much slack here, but I did throw a couple pieces of electrical tape on there just for extra. I got the wires all hooked up, wrapped them back up in electrical tape as well so it doesn't get disconnected. Then you have two holes in here, and that is where I fed it through both sides, so you can get your last clip in, and then this is what connects back into the vehicle. So keep all the slack to the outsides, because the more the better for the outside to get this reattached. And now one final step before you put it on the car, you got to pull these out. They're little plugs. You can see these are where your two 18mm bolts will go back into on the car, and this is where that plug is. They put it in there just so when they paint this thing and put it in the little rhinoliding coating, it doesn't fill up your thread with this black coating and paint. So that's actually threaded. That's for your 13mm bolt that we took off. And then the other bolts, the 15mm that were still attached to the bumper that we took off, you don't have to reuse them. So it's going to be your 13mm and two 18s once you get this back up on the vehicle. Alright, then once you're under the car, get your wiring harness plugged back in. Make sure your bumper or your license plate light works. Two 18mm bolts. We put the tow hook back on. You can see we spray painted it the purple to match the rest of the vehicle. Your 13mm, where that plug we pulled out goes in, is up here. But before you tighten that one down, you want to tighten these so that it goes up in place. And then this, you can see, has a little bit of a notch. So as that goes up, then that will pull the bumper into the vehicle. So snug that one down so it's close but not super tight. Crank these ones all the way tight, and then go back and fully snug this one on both sides. Alright, now before you tighten it all down, I have it just snugged up so it's mostly in place. We threw the spare tire back on. You don't have to take this off to do this job. We were doing that bracket like I mentioned earlier, so we had it off anyway, just less stuff in the way. So put the tire back on. You can come down here and kind of see whether you're centered or not. This thing doesn't have much play back and forth once it's bolted on there, but it does have a little wiggle room, so if you're a little farther one way or the other, you can push it left and right to go centered. And then those 13mm bolts actually roll the bumper upwards and straight. That's why I said tighten those down so they're almost snug, but you can still play with it. Then get it aligned, tighten the bottom ones right down, and then tighten those top ones, and she should sit perfectly. Alright, and that will do it for the install. You can see we got the license plate back on, the nice purple hook to match the rest of the Bronco emblems, and the side, you've seen that in the wrap video. But she's nice and solid, and just so you know that I'm not crazy, if you unlock the vehicle, the light does work, nothing short-circuited, so just snip the old connector off, put your wires together like I showed you in the video, and it should work just fine. And now she's nice and solid. It lines up nicely on both sides, back and forth. A little bit dark, but it lines up nice on both sides. And now if anybody rear ends you, they're gonna feel it a lot more than you will. So you should be good to go. Or if you're taking it off-road and you're bouncing off stuff or hitting anything, you don't have to worry about ripping the flimsy plastic one off. This should hold up just fine over time, and you'll be good to go. So worn front bumper, worn rear bumper, all installed. There's a couple more things for the car still, so if you want to see the rest of it, stay tuned, subscribe, and we'll catch you guys in the next video.